Let me update you on yesterday's 7-2 Supreme Court decision, including 4 conservative justices, including justices that Donald Trump appointed to the Supreme Court. And I'm going to let you know how in this case they mentioned Kilmar Abrego Garcia. In this case, they acknowledge what the Trump administration is doing. I'm also going to tell you how this case actually also relates to the oral arguments in the Birthright, Citizenship / nationwide injunctions case that was heard before the Supreme Court on, I think it was Thursday or maybe Wednesday. All right, so stay up. Let me give you some background first. So on background, for those of you who don't follow me, I'm JJ Legal. I help and I'm watching over 200 lawsuits filed against the Trump administration, and I'm helping people understand what's going on with them and actually also giving them some reason to be calm and understand the court's working. They're working. Now, really quick for background, for those of you who don't know, at some point, Donald Trump had issued an executive order on March 14th, right after, in the middle of the night, after he did that executive order, essentially saying that there's a law from the 18th century that tells and allows the government to just deny due process rights to people who are either part of a nation that's invaded where a war at, or a nation that has sent insurgents to the United States for purposes of taking over the United States government. Those are 2 conditions in which the Congress said you don't have to give people due process rights. You can just take them and send them back or send them out the country. So that's the law that Donald Trump used in his March 14th order. Now, he did that. Obviously, that's not good. So lawyers for some of the detainees that were on that were sent off, and potential ones, because of who will be impacted by the law, ran to the court in D.C. asking for a pause. That judge was like, you're right, I'm not quite sure. Do not send anyone to SCOTUS, which is a torture camp in El Salvador. The Donald Trump administration ignored the judge's order. They were well aware that the judge told them to send back. They were joking about it. They were like, the judge told us to send it back too late. They were joking. Marco Rubio retweeted the El Salvadorian president saying, oopsie, too late. So they're taking it as a joke. The Supreme Court took away that judge's right to issue a nationwide class, because what he did, he said, I'm certifying a class. No one in this class can be removed from this country. Donald Trump administration appealed that decision. Rather than stop them at that point, they did not. They instead said, and this is, which is fine, they said that everyone's entitled to due process rights. And that means that you have due process under the 14th Amendment and the 5th Amendment for the states, mean that you have the right, before the government takes away your life, liberty, property, that you have a right to defend yourself. And for habeas corpus, before they remove you from the country, you have a right to have a hearing, a full hearing, and be aware. So they said that's entitled. On a 9-0, all justices says that's what the Supreme Court said, that the Trump administration must provide to everyone, including the people that are already there, by the way. They got to give them the right to defend themselves. That's set in stone. Of course, and this is kind of related to what happened this week, but I'm going to get to that later. Despite the fact that the Supreme Court said that, despite the fact that on 3 different occasions in 3 different jurisdictions in New York, Colorado, and Northern District of Texas, the ACLU had gotten various different people who were detained or potentially to be detained by the Trump administration and sent out of this country, who are Venezuelans, to stop and create and certify a class, because the Supreme Court said it has to be on an individual by individual basis. So in addition to individual basis, the ACLU also asked that each judge certify a class, in which they did. They said because it's more than just these people, the named plaintiffs, it's other people that are subject to this law. And if you determine that the law is unlawful and shouldn't be used this way, as to our clients, you should determine as to anyone within your jurisdiction. And so that's what has happened. Despite the fact that those things have happened, the Trump administration, nonetheless, even with those decisions out there, started another process and told detainees, we're sending you out of the country. Gave them less than 24-hour notice, not in their native language, didn't give them access to lawyers, and didn't tell them they have the right to actually appeal. And actually, in some of the declarations under the case, they said they just put a piece of paper under their nose in English and told them, sign this, and whether you sign this or not, we're sending you out. They put them on the bus. As they were sending them on the bus to ship them off out of the country again, the lawyers for some of the people on the bus ran to the court in Texas. And now I'm going to tell you the reason why the Trump administration, as I said before, take people from various different sanctuary cities, safe blue state, Vermont, Massachusetts, D.C., and take them either to Louisiana and Texas, because they hope that if they have to go to court, they'll get a judge that's sympathetic to them. And that's worked. Sometimes they haven't worked in other times. And this time it worked. The district court judge who the ACLU ran to and said, there's a bus taking our clients out of this country. The district court judge says, I'm in the middle of another case. I'll get to you later. Didn't take it seriously. That's why Donald Trump and them sent it to Texas. So ACLU was like, all right, bump that. We're going to go to the Fifth Circuit, which is the next level. They went to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. They said, our client is at risk of being sent out of this country. Please take our case. The Fifth Circuit, again, conservative, again, that's why the Donald Trump and them sent them there, said, well, the district court hasn't had an issue yet. You're coming to us too soon. Right. So they're like, all right, forget you. Then they went to the Supreme Court. That's when at 12:44 a.m., in the middle of the night, the Supreme Court stopped them and said, no, we told you before you have to give people due process rights. Stop it. Pause it. They turned the bus around. In this decision, which I'm not going to talk about Alito and Thomas dissenting. This decision, they called it out. They said at 9-0, we told you to give people a notice. 24 hours notice, not in Spanish, not telling them about their opportunity and rights to defend themselves is not due process. That does not count. So for this reason, we're certifying the class. We're going to maintain the class, meaning that they can't send anyone out, which they should have done before in the first place. They kind of did, but the Trump administration doesn't listen. So you can't send anybody out. And what they did, instead of deciding whether the Alien Enemies Act is lawful, which I really feel like they should have, they sent it back down to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is in Texas, and for them to actually decide it. So they said, we're going to send it back down. We're going to let the case continue to percolate and work itself out. But in the meantime, you cannot send anyone out of this country based on the Alien Enemies Act. And the Supreme Court said the reason why is because the standards for getting a preliminary injunction is one that you're more likely or not will win, and it's looking like it, but then also that you will be irreparably harmed. And they said, you government, Donald Trump administration have already shown, if you send someone out, you've already said in another case, that's the case with Judge Zenas, that once they leave, you have no ability to bring them back. So that's definitely irreparable harm. And then we talk about the balance of the interest. Yeah. They even addressed in the 7 justices addressed Alito and Thomas's dissent, saying, how can y'all clearly with a clear face say that there's no harm? Come on, y'all. Whatever. So that's where we are. Now, how does this relate to what happened earlier this week? It relates to what happened earlier this week is because earlier this week, the Supreme Court is saying that 4 district court judges that issue nationwide injunctions blocking Donald Trump's attempt to deny birthright citizenship to children born in the United States, if their parents are not documented, is in violation of not just the U.S. Constitution, but the Supreme Court on 4 different occasions were challenged that there's precedent at the United States Supreme Court saying, yeah, we affirm that. Also, Congress in the Immigration and Nationality Act codified what's in the Constitution and also supports what the Supreme Court's precedent says already on this, that birthright citizenship is something that's enshrined. So there's 2 branches of government that Donald Trump and them want to usurp with his executive order, which he can't do. And he knows very well that if he were to appeal that on substance, he was going to lose. And if you listen to the arguments, the judge still says even Alito and Thomas know that's a loser. So that's why he's trying to appeal on procedural grounds. And so Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson said, if we were to allow you to do that, there's no incentive. I think Kagan and Sotomayor also said that for you guys to ever appeal it. All you're going to do is requiring people who have money and access and resources to stop you. That means you can continue to deny citizenship to everyone else so long as they're not either part of a class or they're not already sued you before. And so that's not going to stop you. And this is exactly in this Alien Enemies Act case is what Ketanji Brown Jackson would say was what's going to happen, because you've already proven that you're doing that. That once a court, district court, or circuit court says it's against the law, you will continue to do the thing that they've already determined is against the law. I mean, you're not taking for granted. You're not accepting the other courts, other district courts saying that you're doing something that's unlawful. You're ignoring their thing. And then even in the case or arguments, Tom Sauer, who was the Solicitor General, could not say for certain whether or not they would even abide of a circuit court told them that they had to give someone a birthright citizenship. And it's essentially saying that we may even not listen. So they're admitting that they're not going to do it. So that pissed off. So they're going to lose on that case. Anyway. So that's the case. That's a roundup. Hope that's helpful for you. But it's all related. The Kilmar case, the Alien Enemies Act, which is unlawful. And I have another video coming up about that you should listen to next. But tell your friends. Let them know. If you're not following me, JJ Legal. That's what I do here. More people need to know. Each one teach one. And yeah, it's a trip. But yeah, trash.